Have you ever wondered what questions to ask your financial advisor or why those questions are crucial? In today's episode, we talk about the most important questions you can ask for clarity and transparency in your financial advisory relationship. These are the questions you must ask your financial advisor.
It's easy to get lost on the way to retirement. Things like taxes, improper planning, and excessive market risk can all lead you astray from your goal of a successful and happy retirement. That's where Liz Whittaberry comes in. She's a holistic financial advisor and the founder of Best Path Advisors, and she can help guide you to a better financial path. This is Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry.
Hey everybody, welcome into this week's edition of the podcast. It is time once again to retire on your best path with Liz Whittaberry and myself, and we are going to be wrapping up our final episode of the year with the questions you must ask your financial advisor. And we'll be back with new episodes in the new year, 2024, just knocking on the door, which is crazy. We're dropping this podcast out Christmas week. So Merry Christmas to everybody, and hope everybody has a great holiday. And Merry Christmas to you, Liz. How are you?
Thank you. I am good. I'm good. And looking forward to having a nice, relaxing Christmas. That's what we're going to do this year. How about you?
Exactly the same thing. So looking forward to it as well. And again, hope everybody has a great holiday. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you can catch new episodes when they come out in the new and coming year. And of course, we'll be back doing this, hopefully sharing some good, useful nuggets of information with folks, just like we're doing today here on these questions that you must ask your financial advisor. So, speaking of the new year, Liz, as heading into that, we tend to think about what is maybe and what isn't working in our life, right? Resolutions or whatever that might be. So let's kind of start the conversation from that framework with the financial conversation. How might this apply to folks who are thinking about their financial situation, their financial advisor, or maybe even a lack thereof? Maybe they don't have one.
Right. And that's a great question, because if they don't have a financial advisor, they could feel like they've reached a point where they need one. They have more wealth now or more complex financial needs, or they're getting ready to retire. But they could also have a financial advisor and just feel like they need a different one. It's no longer a fit.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, right? We outgrow various different things, doctors or whatever the case might be. Sometimes it just changes. And especially if you've been working with someone who's really been focused primarily on the accumulation of the wealth,
Right.
Which nothing wrong with that, right? But that's a little bit easier in a lot of ways than the decumulation side, which is also retirement, because there's so many more moving and parts
Right.
that work and play together. So how does somebody know if that's the framework, right? So how does somebody know, Liz, if they do need a new advisor? It's usually not a situation where the current advisor has done something wrong, right? Especially egregiously wrong. Usually it's just, you just start to kind of maybe feel like it's just not working the way you'd like it to.
Right. It's reached a point where it's not a good fit anymore. Maybe they've outgrown, like you said, what the advisor does. They're getting ready to retire, and the advisor focuses on accumulating wealth as opposed to helping people who are retired spend their wealth.
Right.
They could be unhappy with the attention and service they're getting.
Sure.
And if they are, then that would be a reason to look for a different advisor. Or they might have reached a point where they don't agree with the investment philosophy. What they're wanting is for their investments is different than what they're getting.
That's a great point too, right? Because a lot of times maybe they're focused on a certain subset of the financial services world, and it's just not something that you guys are aligned with anymore. And and when you're talking about outgrowing what they do or so on and so forth, so many people nowadays can call themselves an advisor, right? There's so many different versions, it seems like, out there in the financial services space. And so a good question, I think, to ask, and I think it's a totally fair question for people to bring up to potential, new advisor if they're shopping, is, are you a fiduciary? So two things. Let's explain what that is for folks. And then, of course, are you one?
Yeah. Right. So anyone who is a fiduciary is a person who puts the other person's interest first, when you really simplify it. And there's a lot that goes into the law as to the care and the attention that is required for that. But I have a lot of people ask me that question in a first meeting, because it's a topic that's out there that we see online. And so people will say, are you a fiduciary? And I say, yes, I am a fiduciary. I'm required to be a fiduciary by law. And I'm also required to be a fiduciary under the many different designations that I hold in order to continue to carry that designation.
Right. That's a great point right there.
Mhm.
So many of those come with that, right? So by being
Right,
a certain designation, you are a fiduciary, but there's others that do not.
right, right.
Okay.
And then, I want to be a fiduciary. So I care about helping people be on their best path. But I would think that most advisors want to be a fiduciary as well. So I think it's important to really understand what that means to the advisor. How are they a fiduciary? Don't just say, are you a fiduciary? Go on to say, well, how are you a
Mm.
fiduciary and what solutions can you offer? And does your firm require you to use certain solutions? Are there any limitations on the advice that you can provide to me? And I think those questions will help answer the question a lot more robustly. I've always
Hmm.
made sure that I can offer any solution that makes sense for my clients and that I can make recommendations based on what I believe is in their best interest. So I want to work in a place where I don't have limitations on the advice that I can provide.
Yeah, and I guess to clarify a little bit for folks, Liz, there's fiduciary and then there's suitability, right?
Right.
And so the suitability side is depending on the kind of person you might be working with, the only thing they have to do is offer you something that's suitable for your
Right.
needs. And unfortunately, you kind of think about it this way, folks, that like if they have three different, let's just say three different products that they might think is a good fit for you, as long as it's suitable for your needs, they can offer you any of the three. Whereas the fiduciary has to go with the very best one for your situation. So that's kind of maybe that helps you kind of frame that a little
Right.
bit better, right? Does that make
Right,
sense?
exactly. It does. It does. And I do have a graphic when I'm sitting and talking with people. One has a dot in the middle of a circle and it says product, and the other one says a dot in the middle of the circle. It says you. And so the fiduciary has to put the person in the center. If you're not a fiduciary, you can say, well, here's the product. This is in the center, and does this fit this
Right.
particular
Yeah.
situation? So you're exactly right.
Yeah.
That's a really good explanation.
I always laugh and think, shouldn't all businesses really just kind of have to have this kind of
Yes.
fiduciary standard? Like I always I
Yes.
like to use this analogy of like a mechanic. It's like if you took your car in and said, "Hey, the wheel's being really wobbly. Can you fix this?" And he says, "Yeah, I got it fixed. It's suitable." Would that make you feel good? It's like I don't want to go down the road
Yeah.
70 miles an hour with a suitable tire. I want to go down the road with 70 miles an hour with the absolute perfect correct fixed tire on my car, and that same kind of thing, right?
Yes, that's a great story.
Because it's easy to do, right? It's easy to
Yeah.
have so many again, our businesses and things in life. There's so many businesses out there, so it's a fair question. It's a good question, and I like your follow up on that. How are you a fiduciary? Like what's your solutions that work for that? And I guess that might lead right into this conversation as well, Liz. And this is also a fair question. And I think people get sometimes some folks are very blunt about it, and other folks are they like to tiptoe around it a little bit. But how do you get paid?
Mhm.
Nothing wrong with asking that.
Right.
How do you get paid?
Exactly. And you should know how your advisor is getting paid. And they can be paid lots of ways. There's a lot of different options within this industry.
Hmm.
They can get paid a flat fee, an hourly fee, a fee based on the assets that they're managing, get paid only a commission on a product that pays a commission, or a combination of those.
Mm.
But two things that are really important. Number one is the advisor being transparent about how they're getting paid. Because if they're not being transparent about that, what else might they not be transparent about? You want to be working with somebody that is absolutely transparent with you. The second thing, and I think this is more important, is what's the value you're going to get for the fee that you're going to pay? You can't just compare fees. That fees are going to be probably similar over time
Okay.
under different ways of
Hmm.
being paid, but you really want to look at what's the value of the services that I'm going to get for the fees that I'm going to be paying.
Right.
Yeah, that's really important.
I mean, like,
People,
because nothing's
yes,
free, right? I mean, there's nothing free in the
yes,
world. So, are you getting good value for the money you're paying? I mean, you could apply that same conversation and logic to anything you do. If you go to get a hamburger, right? You
right,
know,
exactly. What are you paying for it and what are you getting in return?
right.
People can hire me to do one of two things, either a comprehensive retirement plan for a flat fee,
Hmm.
or they can hire me to manage their comprehensive retirement plan. So I'm managing it, not just giving the plan to them, but managing it. And I get paid a percentage of assets managed. But the value that they're receiving is the retirement income plan, the tax plan, the risk management plan, the estate plan, the legacy plan. And then for the ongoing clients, the wealth management and investment management that aligns their plan with the assets so that it all works in their best interest.
Yeah, and I think if folks are, and most advisors, I think true financial and retirement planners tend to be in this category, right? Because they are trying to help over the long term. And of course, the better that, that you're providing services for your client, the better they're doing, the better that's working for you. So that seems to be the majority of where I think good retirement planners fall into line of. Others might be like, brokers, for example, right? Where you only talk to them when they're, because there's a commission involved, and again, nothing wrong with that. That's their model. It's just as long as you know that going into it so that you're working with the right kind of person that you want to be working with.
Exactly.
Okay. What does your typical client, look like? From that's a weird question.
Yes.
But from like a it's net worth or like it's different advisors have different specialities, for example, right? They might want to work with only folks that are already retired, but some will work with pre-retirees, that kind of thing.
Right. It is important to work with an advisor that is focusing on the stage of life that you're in.
Yeah.
If you're a college graduate, you're a young family with children, you're a soon-to-be retiree, you all have different needs.
True.
And so you want somebody that is really dialed in on those needs. I work with women and couples that are 55 and up that are planning for retirement. They're already retired. For the most part, they have investable assets over $2 million. And the importance of that is that they share similar financial planning needs. So I can focus on everything that I need to know that will help them address those specific needs.
Yeah, because you don't have to, or maybe you don't want to be a jack of all trades, everybody.
Right.
And I'd imagine for like a lot of advisors, and I talk to many across the country all the time, Liz, and it's the same kind of conversation. When you're first starting out in the business, especially if you started out 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it might be, like, any company, any business, you're taking anybody that walks in the door, right? Because you're trying to grow your business. But over time, you develop your skill sets as well, and what you really excel at are the things that you are more interested in or can do a better job at, whatever that analogy looks like. And then you start to kind of craft out what your ideal client looks like. So I think that was kind of the idea behind that. So I appreciate you kind of breaking that down for us. We were talking just on a couple of podcasts ago, if I'm not mistaken here, about RMDs, right? And like minimizing the impact of that. So that could be another kind of specialty conversation. You might be working with somebody who doesn't focus on that.
That's an example of being able to really focus in on a specific issue for my clientele and help them address that. Whereas somebody that is working with children, young families with children, they're not even thinking about that yet.
Right. They're 40 years away from that or whatever. Yeah. Great point. All right. Philosophy. You mentioned that earlier. That's a good one too. So let's kind of focus in on that for a few minutes. What is your investment philosophy? So that could be more risk or that could be more protection or whatever.
Yeah. And it's important to have an investment philosophy that is aligned with the advisor's investment philosophy. I have a lot of clients that'll come into me as they're planning for retirement and tell me that they don't think they're invested properly for this stage of life. They think they have too much risk now or they don't have enough income potential.
Right. That's
and
the norm,
sometimes they've even talked to their current advisor and aren't seeing any changes. Nothing's being done differently. Maybe the advisor just offers models and they feel like they're a little bit in a box there. So I approach everything on an individual basis with each client using that retirement cash flow to design the bucket plan that we've talked about in some of the earlier podcasts, and then selecting the investments to line up with each bucket so that no two clients have the exact same portfolio. But that fits for the people that I'm working for that retirement planning. That's not necessarily what would work for somebody in a different stage in life or with a different philosophy.
No, exactly. And that's the point oftentimes of the initial consultations, the complimentary reviews and consultations when you're shopping for a new advisor is so you can, ask some of these questions and get an idea of what they're all about. And it's a two-way street too, folks, right? So when you go in to like shop for a new financial professional and you're talking with them and they're asking you questions, it's got to work both ways, right? You want to feel comfortable and be working with the advisor. It's the right fit, but they also want to make sure you're the right client for them. Again, I think when you're in a stage like Liz is in, where you're trying to find the clients that you can help, right? To your point, if what you're offering is not what they need in that time of their life, it's not going to be a good marriage, right? It's not going to be a good fit.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
And that might lead to really strength or specialty, like we mentioned a minute ago. Maybe somebody needs more on the tax side or, something of that nature.
Right. And so to ask the potential advisor what is their strength or what makes them different from other advisors is really good because the answer can reveal the main focus of that advisor. And is that what you really need? Are they really focused on investment management only? Are they focused on business planning, planning for young executives?
Mm.
What is that? My main focus is retirement planning. And I really think the strength that I bring to this is the fact that I'm doing it comprehensively and then including that tax planning. And, people have a lot of confusion about how to save on that lifetime tax bill. And yet every dollar that is saved in taxes is a dollar to enjoy in retirement. When we did that podcast on the required minimum distribution, I
Hmm.
told you the story about being able to save a $500,000
Oh, right. Yeah.
over
Yeah.
their lifetime in taxes paid. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's very huge.
Yeah, for sure.
And so knowing, if you're at retirement and you're looking for the tax planning, finding an advisor who does that. But if you're at a different stage, what is their specialty? What are you looking for? And do they really excel in that area?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you've been doing this for what, 20 plus years?
Yes, 22.
22.
22.
Yeah.
And over that time, I've completed 19 designations that that provide me with a wealth of information. And those are all focused on what I do for my clients. In fact, right now I'm working on a master's in taxation so that I can
There you go.
learn even more to help my clients.
And that kind of drives home that conversation of what specifically are they doing, or do they work on it's their strengths that you might need. You might be a business owner, and maybe the person you're talking
Yes.
to doesn't do anything with business owners, right? So that therefore it's not a good fit. So lots of different ways to think about that as well. Let's talk about expectations here as we start to wind this down a little bit. This is, I think, a big component of the relationship, Liz. How much contact are you planning on? Are we planning on having with each other? Right. So let's set some
Right.
expectations early on in the process, so that we know. Are we going to meet in person? Are we going to have phone conversations? Is it a couple times a year? Is it once a year? Whatever that might look like. And I imagine that probably changes a little bit through the course of the relationship, but it's still a good idea to set those expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point about it changing. In this area, I think there's a lot of disappointment over time. I see surveys that say people are frustrated with the level of communication they get from their advisors. Some of them will say that they only hear from their advisor when the market's going up. They don't hear from them when it's going down, or they only hear from them if they want to make an investment change.
Which sounds like a
And these
broker to
are,
me, but yeah.
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 And these are, nationwide surveys looking at how do people feel about their advisors and the level of contact that they have. Your financial plan supports your life. And so you really want to work with somebody that's going to communicate regularly, that's going to be in touch with you, that's going to know what's going on with your life. They're going to communicate with clarity so you know you're on track. All of that is important. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to meet every quarter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you have to meet every month. It really depends on how frequently you have questions and want to have those, updates on your plan. I've been told by my clients that they're very happy with how proactive I am. And I tell people that we'll meet pretty regularly during that first year. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more that gets done during the first year, getting everything lined up. But then beyond that, some people want to meet monthly and others just want to meet once or twice a year. And I'm fine with both of those as long as we're able to stay on top of any decisions they need to make. They know to reach out to me. We can always have a phone call, a Zoom call, meet in person whenever needed. But then in between meetings, I give updates by email specific to their plan. I mean, not just email newsletter, but give them updates specific to them.
Oh,
So,
right. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Specific to them, that's really awesome because, like, in general, that was actually kind of flow into my next question, which is extra educational resources like our podcast, for example, right? And those newsletters, that's kind of that generalized thing where you're giving some extra content, but it's cool that you're also doing more specialized, specific content in emails as well.
Yeah. And I just think people want to know, I would want to know things that can help me, but also specific to me, how am I
Yeah.
doing? And so
Yeah.
I like to do both. But yes, I believe advisors should provide as many educational resources as they can. Now, you can only do so much because you have so much time.
Right.
And so I focus on doing this podcast, doing the YouTube channel, doing the webinars on taxes and retirement and Social Security. All of those things are geared towards the education for the people that I know the most about their plan, people that are getting ready to retire or are retired. And I want people to be able to go out there and find that information, even if they're not a client, to find good information so that they can be on their best path for their retirement.
Well, that's the good stuff on the website, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there's lots of good links right there on the good stuff. And I know we're getting a little bit long here, so I'm going to kind of combine the last two questions because I think they kind of work together anyway. I can kind of combine them. It might be the question of, hey, what happens under an emergency situation if maybe you're not available? AKA, or well, it's not AKA, but or combine that with, am I working with you or somebody on your team or both? And I think that comes back to also firm size as well, right, Liz? Because if you're working with a big box place or a larger financial advisor who's got, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different advisors on the staff, that's certainly a fair question. I think if you're going to a boutique place and you might be much more in that boutique arena, you're probably only working with the individual, but it's a fair question.
Right. Absolutely. In my own situation, if somebody has an emergency, they need to talk to somebody right away, and I'm not available, then I do have backup office support that my clients can reach out to if they needed to. I have an advisory board of other women that do the same type of planning I do that can step in, and we support each other in that way.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. But when people work with me, they're working directly with me because I want to be the CFO for my clients. I know there are other advisors that want to have as many clients as possible. So they want to have lots and lots of clients, and they only meet with people before they become a client and then have team members that take over from there.
Right.
That's not what I want. I want to be personally involved with my clients, with their situation. I want to be actively involved in the ongoing planning and implementation. And so my clients and I are going to meet regularly. They're going to work directly with me. If something were to happen to me, I used to have a client that would say, if I get run over by a herd of turtles.
I like that one.
Yeah. Then I've got a couple of women advisors that are ready to stand in, ready to service my clients. We've signed the agreements that we need to sign so that they can do that. And they're women that have the same values. They specialize in retirement planning. They use the same processes and the same methods. And we talk regularly every month about planning things that we're doing. And so I do have people that would step in. Now, my goal is to live to be over 100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I want to live a very long time, and I want to work a long time. I enjoy working, and I enjoy helping people. So, my goal is to be here for another 20, 30 years doing what I'm doing, helping people be on their best path for their retirement.
I was going to say, if you plan on living to 100, you're going to be around another 50 years. What are you talking about, 20, 30 years?
20, 30 years working at least.
Okay. All right, that's fair.
I'll have some retirement time,
that's right.
I'm sure.
You got to have a little bit of retirement.
At the end.
Right? Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's good stuff. And I like the herd of turtles, too. I wonder what that would look like, getting run over by a herd of turtles.
What would it be like to get run over by a herd of turtles?
Yeah, exactly. It could be really, depending on the size of the turtle, it could be really fun or really painful, So if it's great big sea turtles, leatherneck turtles. All right, folks. Well, there you go. So as we wrap up this podcast for this year, some great questions and things to ponder when you're maybe shopping for an advisor as the new year's upon you, if that's the situation or the case you might find yourself in. Always make sure that you are checking with a qualified professional, a fiduciary, like we talked about in this episode. And if you have some questions, Liz is one of those and can certainly help you out. So to retire on your best path with her, just reach out to her online at bestpathadvisors.com. That's bestpathadvisors.com. Lots of good tools, tips, and resources there on the good stuff. And you can also book some time with her. Subscribe to the podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever you'd like to do there. Check out the YouTube channel. All that stuff right there at bestpathadvisors.com. Liz, thanks for hanging out. Great conversation with you as always. Have a lovely, lovely holiday.
You too. Thank you so much, Mark.
Absolutely. And we'll see you folks right here in the new year, 2024. Wow, that's weird. It's weird to say that.
Yeah.
But we'll be back with new episodes in January here on Retire on Your Best Path with Liz Whittaberry, founder and financial advisor at Best Path Advisors. The
The preceding program is sponsored by Best Path Advisors, which is solely responsible for its content. Securities offered through J.W. Cole Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through J.W. Cole Advisors. Best Path Advisors, J.W. Cole Financial, and J.W. Cole Advisors are unaffiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Liz Whitberry should not be construed as specific tax, legal, or investment advice, nor as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Neither J.W. Cole Financial nor its representatives provide legal, tax, or accounting advice. Persons who provide such advice do so in a capacity other than as a registered representative of J.W. Cole. Investing is subject to risks, including the loss of principal. Due to volatility within the markets mentioned, opinions are subject to change without notice. Information is based on sources believed to be reliable, however, their accuracy or completeness cannot be guaranteed.